What makes a motorcycle engine truly great? Is it the adrenaline pumping power, the smoothness of the ride, or is it its ability to deliver mile after mile without breaking a sweat? A great engine can transform a motorcycle into a timeless icon. But not every engine earns that status. Some leave riders frustrated, stranded, or downright terrified. In this video, we're exploring the darker side of motorcycle history. 15 worst motorcycle engines ever produced. Number 15. Yamaha TX750 engine. At first glance, the Yamaha TX750 seemed like a winner. Yamaha's parallel twin-cylinder 750 cubic capacity engine promised smooth power delivery, competitive performance, and reliability. In theory, it could rival the likes of Honda's CB750, a bike that was already redefining the motorcycle industry. Unfortunately, Yamaha's bold attempt turned out to be a mechanical nightmare. The TX750 introduced an innovative oil vapor recirculation system designed to improve efficiency. However, the system had a fatal flaw. It caused the oil to foam, resulting in poor lubrication and engine overheating. Riders reported catastrophic engine seizures after just a few thousand miles. It didn't help that the engine's balancer shafts, meant to reduce vibration, were poorly executed, leading to significant wear and tear. Yamaha issued multiple recalls, but by then the damage was done. The TX750 gained a reputation as one of the least reliable bikes of its era. Dealers struggled to move inventory, and owners were stuck with machines that constantly broke down. Yamaha quickly discontinued the model. Number 14. Harley-Davidson V-Rod Destroyer engine. The Harley-Davidson V-Rod Destroyer was marketed as a drag bike for hardcore speed lovers. With a 1250 cubic capacity liquid-cooled V-twin engine capable of producing over 165 horsepower, it had the makings of a beast. But here's the catch. This engine was all bark and very little bite in real-world performance. The engine was prone to overheating after just a few high-speed runs, leading to frequent breakdowns. Many riders discovered that the engine's internal components, such as the connecting rods and pistons, couldn't handle the stress of prolonged use. As a result, even minor miscalculations during a race often led to blown engines. The Destroyer's story didn't end well for Harley. While it was a thrilling concept, the lack of durability and reliability left riders with expensive repair bills and plenty of frustration. What should have been a legacy of speed turned into a reminder that raw power means nothing if the engine can't handle the heat. Literally. Number 13. Ducati 860 GT engine. Ducati is a name known for its high-performance motorcycles, but even legends have their off days, and the 860 GT engine was one of Ducati's most regrettable missteps. Released during the mid-1970s, the 860 GT was an attempt to modernize Ducati's lineup with a new angular design and a revamped 864 cubic capacity V-twin engine. Instead of wowing riders, it left them shaking. Literally. The engine suffered from severe vibration, which was not only uncomfortable but also caused mechanical issues. Riders reported components loosening and even falling off during long rides. Additionally, the engine's oiling system was poor, leading to premature wear and overheating. To make matters worse, the 860 GT guzzled fuel like there was no tomorrow, making it an impractical choice for anyone who actually wanted to enjoy their bike for more than a short trip. The 860 GT's flaws tarnished Ducati's reputation at a time when it was trying to expand into new markets. It took years, and the eventual release of models like the 900SS for Ducati to recover from this misstep. The 860 GT engine remains a reminder that bold design choices mean nothing if the mechanics don't hold up. Number 12. Triumph 650cc oil and frame engine. Triumph had dominated the motorcycle world throughout the 1960s, with its legendary parallel twin engines. However, by the early 1970s, the British brand faced increasing competition from Japanese manufacturers like Honda. In an effort to modernize, Triumph introduced the 650 cubic capacity oil and frame engine. Instead of solidifying Triumph's reputation, it contributed to the company's decline. The oil and frame design was meant to double as the bike's oil reservoir. A clever idea on paper, however in practice it led to a slew of problems. The design caused overheating and poor lubrication, particularly during long rides. Worse yet, the new engine configuration resulted in a higher center of gravity, making the bikes harder to handle. This was a death sentence for a company already struggling to compete against the more user-friendly Japanese bikes. riders were vocal about their frustrations. Triumph's core fan base, known for its loyalty, was turned off by the company's inability to deliver the reliability and performance they were used to. The 650 cubic capacity oil and frame engine is often cited as one of the reasons Triumph stumbled so badly in the 1970s, forcing the company to reinvent itself in the decades that followed. Number 11. Suzuki RE5 Rotary Engine. The Suzuki RE5 was supposed to be a game changer, powered by a 497 cubic capacity rotary, or Wankel engine. It was Suzuki's ambitious attempt to leap ahead of the competition with futuristic technology, and while the RE5 looked and sounded impressive, its engine proved to be its Achilles heel. Rotary engines, while innovative, are notoriously complex, and the RE5 was no exception. Its engine suffered from poor fuel economy, frequent overheating, and high levels of mechanical wear. The rotary design also made it difficult to maintain, requiring specialized knowledge that most mechanics lacked at the time. To make matters worse, the RE5's performance didn't justify the added headaches, with middling acceleration and underwhelming reliability. Despite Suzuki's best marketing efforts, riders were hesitant to embrace such an unconventional engine. Sales flopped, and the RE5 became a commercial failure. Number 10. Honda CX500 Turbo Engine. Honda CX500 Turbo was supposed to be the future of motorcycles. With its futuristic styling, turbocharged 497 cubic capacity V-twin engine, and promise of cutting-edge performance, it was marketed as a technological marvel. But once it hit the streets, it became clear that the CX500 Turbo was more of a headache than a revolution. Turbocharging was still in its infancy in the motorcycle world, and the CX500 Turbo showed just how challenging it was to implement. The turbo lag was infamous, power delivery was unpredictable with little happening at lower RPMs, only to unleash a sudden surge of power that could easily catch riders off guard. This made the bike difficult to handle, particularly in tight corners or city traffic. The fact that the turbo system made the bike heavy and complex didn't win at any points either. At over 560 pounds, it was far from agile, and its cooling system struggled to manage the additional heat generated by the turbocharger. Riders also complained about excessive mechanical noise, making the bike feel less refined than Honda's non-turbocharged models. While the CX500 Turbo was undeniably ambitious, it was ultimately impractical. It was too complex, too expensive, and didn't deliver the real-world benefits riders expected. Honda discontinued it after just 2 years. Number 9. Kawasaki H2 Mach 4 Engine. Known as the Widowmaker, the Kawasaki H2 Mach 4 wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a thrill ride with a death wish. Powered by a ferocious 748 cubic capacity 2-stroke triple-cylinder engine, the H2 was designed for one thing: speed. And while it delivered that in spades, it did so at the expense of everything else, including rider safety. The engine was brutally powerful, producing a whopping 74 horsepower, an extraordinary figure for a bike in the early 1970s. But the power delivery was far from smooth. H2's 2-stroke design resulted in a violent surge of acceleration that could overwhelm even experienced riders. Combine that with poor handling, an unforgiving chassis, and brakes that felt like an afterthought, and you had a recipe for disaster. The nickname Widowmaker wasn't an exaggeration. Riders found it nearly impossible to control the bike at high speeds, especially in corners, where the lightweight frame and sudden power spikes made it unpredictable. Fuel economy was abysmal. That was the least of its problems. Staying alive was the real challenge. While the H2 has since become a cult classic, it's remembered as much for its flaws as its raw power. It's a perfect example of how chasing top-end speed without balancing safety and handling can lead to a notoriously dangerous ride. Number 8. Harley-Davidson AMF Shovelhead Engine. The AMF Shovelhead engine was born during one of the darkest periods in Harley-Davidson's history. In the 1970s, Harley was owned by AMF, American Machine and Foundry, a company better known for making bowling equipment than motorcycles. During this time, cost-cutting and rushed production led to some of the most unreliable engines Harley ever produced. The Shovelhead engine, which was already showing its age by the time AMF took over, became even worse under AMF's management. Quality control was virtually non-existent, and many bikes left the factory with significant mechanical issues. Oil leaks were so common that riders joked Harley-Davidsons came with built-in oil change systems. The engines also suffered from frequent overheating, poor assembly, and a host of electrical problems. For riders, owning a Harley during the AMF years was an exercise in patience and mechanical know-how. Breakdowns were frequent, and reliability was a roll of the dice. The shovelhead's problems were so widespread that it nearly bankrupted Harley-Davidson. The AMF era came to an end when Harley's management team repurchased the company in 1981, but the damage to the shovelhead's reputation was already done. Number 7. BMW K1 engine. BMW is known for engineering precision and luxurious performance. But the BMW K1, with its 987 cubic capacity inline-4 engine, remains one of their most puzzling experiments. Launched in 1988, the K1 was a sport touring motorcycle that attempted to blend speed and comfort. But the engine and its design never quite matched the lofty ambitions. On paper, the K1's engine had potential, solid power delivery, impressive torque, and a smooth ride. However, in reality, it was plagued by issues that prevented it from living up to expectations. The K1's engine ran hot, which led to overheating problems during longer rides. Coupled with an overly complex fuel injection system and a gearbox that lacked precision, the K1's engine could be an absolute nightmare for anyone trying to ride for extended periods of time. The engine's biggest flaw, however, was its weight. The K1 was an absolute tank, tipping the scales at 530 pounds, far too heavy for a sport bike trying to rival the likes of Yamaha and Kawasaki. The bike's handling was stiff, and the excessive weight combined with the clunky transmission made it hard to maneuver at high speeds or in tight corners. This weight issue also placed unnecessary strain on the engine, contributing to its overheating and performance hiccups. Number 6. Suzuki TL1000S engine. Suzuki's TL1000S was marketed as a high-performance V-twin sport bike, designed to take on the likes of Ducati and Honda's sport bike offerings. With a 996 cubic capacity engine that produced 120 horsepower, it had the numbers to be a serious contender, but under the hood, the TL1000S's engine proved to be a time bomb. One of the most infamous flaws of the TL1000S was its rear suspension design, which was closely tied to its engine. The bike used an unconventional rotating mass system, where the engine also acted as a stabilizer for the rear suspension. While this was an interesting design, it created a highly unpredictable and dangerous ride, especially at high speeds. The rear end could become unstable, leading riders to lose control mid-corner or during high-speed acceleration. But that wasn't the only issue. The engine's power delivery was aggressive, with a sudden surge of torque that made it difficult to modulate throttle control. This resulted in many riders losing traction and spinning out on both the street and track. Additionally, the bike's cooling system wasn't up to the task, leading to excessive heat buildup and further mechanical issues. Despite Suzuki's best efforts to fix the suspension and other design flaws through recalls and upgrades, the TL1000S became known for its catastrophic handling issues. It received numerous complaints from riders and critics, and after a brief run, Suzuki discontinued the model. While the engine had raw power, it was far too unpredictable and dangerous for most riders, marking the TL1000S as one of the most problematic sport bikes of its era. Number 5. Indian Chief 80 engine. By the early 1950s, Indian motorcycles were struggling to keep up with Harley-Davidson, and their Chief 80 engine is a symbol of that decline. The Chief 80 was supposed to be a rebirth for the company, but instead, it only highlighted Indian's inability to innovate in an era when the American motorcycle market was being dominated by its competitor. The 80 CI engine in the Chief was underpowered and lacked the performance to compete with the likes of Harley's more robust engines. Riders found that the bike struggled to maintain high speeds, and it couldn't match the acceleration or durability of its rivals. Worse yet, the engine was prone to frequent breakdowns, with components failing unexpectedly, which led to a string of disappointed customers. But the real issue with the Chief 80 wasn't its lack of performance, it was its sheer reliability. The engine was prone to failure, in even the most basic scenarios. Oil leaks were common, and the engine's cooling system often couldn't keep up with the demands of longer rides. With Indian's reputation already on the line, the Chief 80 did little to bolster its image, and it ultimately contributed to the company's decline in the face of more reliable, higher performance models from Harley-Davidson and others. The Chief 80 struggles were a clear sign that Indian wasn't keeping pace with the changing motorcycle landscape, was one of the final nails in the coffin for the company, which would eventually fade from the mainstream market in the following decades. Number 4. Kawasaki Z1300 engine. Kawasaki's Z1300 was a bold and ambitious project for the company. Introduced in 1979 with 1300 cubic capacity inline-6 engine, the idea was to create the ultimate touring bike, combining power, comfort, and smoothness with cutting-edge engineering. While the Z1300 certainly had the power and the luxury features, its engine quickly became infamous for its flaws. The Z1300's engine was a technological marvel in some ways, featuring 6 cylinders instead of the more traditional 2 or 4. On paper, it was a powerhouse that produced a respectable 120 horsepower, enough to put the Z1300 in a league of its own. However, the engine was far too large and heavy for its frame, creating serious handling issues. The weight distribution was poor, leading to a bike that felt clumsy and hard to control, especially at lower speeds or while cornering. However, the real problem with the Z1300 engine was its complexity and maintenance demands. 6 cylinders meant more parts to worry about, and keeping the engine running smoothly required constant attention. The cooling system struggled to keep the engine at an optimal temperature, and it was prone to overheating, especially during long rides. The fuel efficiency was dreadful, and the weight of the engine itself drained the bike's overall performance. Riders often complained that it was a pain to service and keep running smoothly, as many mechanics struggled with the intricacies of the inline-6 configuration. While the Z1300 had a cult following due to its power and sheer novelty of its design, it was a failure in practical terms. Number 3. Honda NR750 engine. The Honda NR750 was a dream bike for many, an innovative machine powered by a unique 748cc V4 engine with oval pistons. It was a technological masterpiece, an engineering marvel that promised to push the boundaries of what a motorcycle engine could be. But while it was a masterpiece in theory, the NR750's engine was more trouble than it was worth in practice. Honda's oval piston engine was designed to allow the bike to achieve higher revolutions per minute, which would theoretically improve performance. While this technology showed promise on the racetrack, the real-world application was far from flawless. The oval pistons created excessive friction and heat, leading to engine overheating and frequent failures. The complex design also made the engine incredibly difficult to maintain, requiring specialized parts and expert mechanics. The NR750's engine was also notoriously underpowered for a bike that cost a staggering amount of money, around $50,000 when it was new, with only 125 horsepower. The bike's performance didn't match the hype. The engine's smoothness and reliability were far below what was expected of a top-tier machine. While the NR750 was a technological wonder, it never achieved the level of performance that its price tag suggested. What the NR750 showed was that even the most innovative technologies need to be tested and refined before they can be rolled out on a mass-produced bike. The engine was ultimately a failure, and Honda quickly moved away from the concept of oval pistons for motorcycles, choosing to focus on more traditional and trusty designs. Number 2. Yamaha RD350 engine. The Yamaha RD350 was one of the most loved sport bikes of the early 70s. Known for its compact, sleek frame and high-revving 347 cubic capacity 2-stroke engine, the RD350 was a favorite among riders who wanted a lightweight bike with a bit of bite. However, while it was fun to ride, its engine was infamous for being one of the most troublesome and short-lived power plants in motorcycle history. The RD350's 2-stroke engine was quick to accelerate, but it also had a reputation for being incredibly unreliable. The oiling system was rudimentary at best, often leading to engine seizures when riders neglected to mix the oil properly or use subpar oil. Even when maintained correctly, the engine would wear out prematurely due to the high revving nature of 2-stroke engines and the lack of proper lubrication at higher RPMs. Riders often had to rebuild or replace the engine after just a few thousand miles. The RD350 also suffered from a poorly designed exhaust system that contributed to excessive back pressure, which robbed the engine of efficiency and power. This not only affected performance, but also made the bike difficult to tune. It didn't help that the bike's carburetors were poor, often requiring frequent adjustments and making it harder to keep the engine running smoothly. Number 1. Harley-Davidson Knucklehead Engine. The Harley-Davidson Knucklehead engine is an iconic piece of American motorcycle history. but it also deserves its place at the top of this list for its notable mechanical flaws. Introduced in 1936, the Knucklehead was a revolutionary design for its time, marking a significant step forward for Harley-Davidson with its overhead valve V-twin engine. However, despite its groundbreaking design, the engine was plagued by numerous problems that made it infamous for its unreliability. The Knucklehead's biggest issue was its complexity. Unlike earlier flathead engines, which were simpler and more rugged, the Knucklehead's overhead valves required precise adjustments and maintenance. Unfortunately, the precision needed for these adjustments wasn't always achievable, leading to valve and camshaft problems. The engine often suffered from valve sticking and wear, which resulted in poor performance and costly repairs. The Knucklehead also had a tendency to overheat. The engine's cooling system, while advanced for its time, couldn't keep up with the demands of high-speed cruising. Riders often found themselves dealing with engine breakdowns on long trips or in hot weather. Additionally, the engine's relatively low compression ratio led to a lackluster performance in comparison to some of its competition, such as the more powerful Indian engines. Oil leaks were another persistent issue with the Knucklehead. The bike was notorious for dripping oil everywhere, on the frame, the ground, and of course the rider's clothes. This was mostly due to the engine seals and gaskets, which were not up to the challenge of containing the engine's internal pressures. While the Knucklehead is revered by collectors and Harley enthusiasts today for its vintage appeal and historical significance, its mechanical failures in its time made it one of the least reliable engines ever produced by the company. Which of these problem-ridden power plants shocked you the most? Or is there a notorious engine you think should have made the list? Drop your thoughts down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesome videos just like this one. See you next time.